In physics, they say things like, allow me this miracle, and I will give you the rest. So I say, allow me the miracle of black and white, and I will give you the rest. So you might ask me, well, if you have black and white, where does consciousness come from? To answer this, I say black and white alone have no information, and therefore consciousness is not needed, or it would be very dull. But when you have black and white together, let's say I line them together. Infinite potential information exists by blending them together. Here is some examples of what I mean. So because black and white are visual things, they need a seer to see them, or at least they need eyes to see themselves. So consciousness arises to fulfill that need. Consciousness, the seer of black and white. And the moment consciousness opens its eyes, time and space begin. But this is not the physical space-time of this universe. This is the imaginary realm of space and time. Now I want to show you some diagrams, kind of like how these things form consciousness. So here is a white sphere surrounded by black. This symbolizes the blending of black and white. The sphere symbolizes infinity. That is why the white is that shape. So I am now going to give black the same symbolism. So this makes more sense. So white infinity has entered black infinity. Now there is infinite potential information that can be made with them together. But they need a seer, and space and time to move and interact. So by implication, consciousness arises and time and space, symbolized here by an invisible sphere bubble and a small invisible sphere inside of it. The big sphere represents space, and the small one represents consciousness. They mirror the black and white, but they are unique. They are both invisible, which is the opposite of visible. They are invisible because space is invisible, and also consciousness cannot see itself. What I am describing here is what I call original consciousness, or some may say God. This original consciousness is like a floating eye, which is the seer of black and white. You might say it is the blending of black and white and its infinite potential. You might say its parents are black and white. But getting back to the topic, the visible black and white implied a seer. So, consciousness and time-space arose in the imaginary realm, and they were the opposite. They were invisible. This also shows that the principle of opposites is not only the first principle, but it is continuously used throughout everything, in creation and before creation. There is also another principle here, the principle of implication. For consciousness arose out of implication. So one might see the principle of opposites as the structure, and the principle of implication as the forward motion. As black and white needed a seer to be seen, so unfolded consciousness and space. So the principle of implication could be said as the natural progression of things which merely pop up out of necessity or further options which could be explored. So what it would look like if we overlay space and original consciousness over black and white, and if we stepped into the perception of consciousness, something like this. This is the beginning of consciousness, as if consciousness had just opened its eye or eyes for the first time. You, who are consciousness, are the seer of black and white together. The white is in the shape of a sphere because the sphere is the fullest shape. It holds all shapes within it. It symbolizes infinity. In theory, if you could carve the sphere into any shape or shapes, you could carve every face that ever existed into the sphere. You could also carve the whole universe into the sphere if you allowed things to float. Here is a more in-depth explanation as to why the sphere symbolizes infinity.
With the sphere, and the sphere symbolizes infinity in the material world. As a shape, it all shapes fit inside the sphere. So for instance, from the middle point, it points in every direction equally, equal sides from the middle point. So imagine if you had a balloon and you were blowing it up, but it was a square. As the square blew out, it would hit certain points and it wouldn't be able to go any further. But if it was a circle, it could keep going, filling up all the space, meaning that all shapes fit inside the sphere. Another way of looking at this is that if you can imagine that you're in infinite space, floating by yourself, and there's absolutely nothing else, just complete space, then from you pointing out to any direction would be equal. Even though it goes on forever, it would equal. So the same with a sphere, from the point of the center to any direction is equal. So therefore, the sphere symbolizes infinity.
So now we have 4 parts: black, white, the original pair, or the original opposites. Then we have original consciousness and space. Consciousness is the seer, implied by black and white being visual things, which then consciousness emerges from to see them. And then the imaginary space realm where black and white can exist, and consciousness exists also to observe them. At this point, I'm going to separate space from time, because at the beginning, when consciousness first opened its eyes, we'll say it didn't open its eyelids, but rather it just became aware of a white sphere with a black background, because opening its eyes might imply movement. So consciousness awoke seeing black and white, 2 parts, and implied space, meaning even before consciousness could move, even in its thoughts, the potential for it to scan the sphere left to right, if it had motion, existed. Meaning distance existed, implying some kind of space. But before motion, we might say time didn't exist. The 4 original parts are static. For now, I just want to focus on the 4 parts first, and point to some religious symbols which appear to both contain the original 4 parts. As we can see here, the YHWH is the name of God in the Jewish religion, and it has 4 letters. Likewise, the yin-yang symbol from some Eastern religions also appears to have 4 parts. We can also see that the 2 H's line up with the 2 circles on the yin-yang symbol. I have not studied these in depth. I just wanted to point out their symbolic similarities. Now, assuming they are describing the same thing, and also that I am correctly describing what they intended, it would appear the yin and yang gives us more information. Not that I know what the Jewish letters mean, just based on symbolic observation. With that being said, the 2 H's line up with the 2 small circles, showing the sameness. Like the 2 circles are the same shape, just like the 2 H's, but the 2 circles are also different colors. One is black and one is white, giving us more information, and suggests that they are opposites. The 5th part. As we can see here, the yin and yang symbol, though symbolically the same as the YHWH, also gives more information. The yin-yang symbol also has a formation of swirling and almost looks like 2 tadpoles, and they seem to have a direction they are heading in. This could imply motion, movement, and time. It could be seen as a kind of clock, symbolizing the amount of good or evil there is in the world at any period of time, also showing that it always swings back around to the other side. It shows many things symbolically, and particularly that everything is in a constant balance over time. I want to show you a different image which also symbolizes the same thing. This is the original 4 parts, all in their static positions. Black and white opposite from one another, and consciousness and space opposite from one another. So now we have all the parts in place, forming a ring or loop, which is the 4 foundational parts that create everything. And in the center of the ring, time or motion can kick in and start producing the potential of black and white together in space, giving us the 5th part, time. But this part is not like the previous parts, as this part starts to stack. So it's not just time. It's also motion, memory, movement, attraction, and repulsion. As the potential of black and white implies movement, so that the two original parts can dance together, seen and controlled through consciousness and space. Later on, when the implication implies, it can also be seen as love and hate. So the fifth part is multifaceted. It is the spiraling out and the heartbeat of the original four parts. It might also be seen as the mouth of God and the place of creation. Now, as you see this image, from four parts creating a loop and kind of a ring, once the fifth part is activated, the ring now vibrates to create a sphere. So it goes from 2D to 3D.